Thank you for coming. Welcome everyone to our spring 2023 Indie Social Night. My name is Stephanie and I'm a trade marketing manager and an acquiring editor at Annick Press. And I'm so excited that you're here and I'll be your host for this wonderful evening. And whether you've been with us for a few times and you're putting that in the chat, or if this is your first time here with us, welcome. We are so glad that you're here with us. And we are fun, fantastic, interesting, independent Canadian presses that are here to chat books with some of our favorite people, bookseller and librarian friends that are joining us tonight. One thing about virtual events that's really good, other than the fact that we can all be super comfortable at home and in our comfy pants, is that we're able to open this up to more booksellers and librarians across the continent on this lovely Tuesday afternoon or evening, wherever you're joining us from. So why don't you let us know where you're from in the chat if you haven't already done so. It's pretty cool for us to see where people are chatting to us from tonight. But first off, Christina is going to be popping a link into the chat for an ARC request form. And you can open that up, and as you hear about all of our fantastic books this evening, you can check off the titles that you're interested in and submit that at the end. I looked through the ARC request form this afternoon, and I wanted everything on the list, as I do every single time, because we have great titles. So good luck picking all your favorite books. I introduced myself really briefly, and we're starting to learn where all of you are from. So I'm going to ask my friends here to introduce themselves. All of my partners here in publishing, can you give us your name, your publishing house, and its claim to fame and what you do there? My neighbors recently got a French bulldog who's outside right now, and I was just talking about my neighbor down the hall who lets her bird out in the evenings. And I love seeing my neighbors' animals. So I'm wondering, my friends, if your friends compared you to an animal, which would it be? I think my friends would probably compare me to a hyena because I have the loudest laugh anywhere all the time. People in restaurants even turn to look at me, and Google Meet tells me that I'm too loud and reduces noise when I laugh. So I would probably be a very loud hyena. Let's hear from ECW next. Elham, which animal would you be?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. My name is Elham. I'm from ECW Press. If you don't know us, our claim to fame is that we are one of the biggest and most diversified publishers in Canada. We have something for absolutely everyone in every genre subject that you could ever want. We're also one of Canada's biggest audiobook producers, and so we produce a lot of our own audiobooks. A lot of our friend publishers, we do their audiobooks as well. So definitely check out our audiobook catalog. I actually asked, did I say that I was the senior publicist / trade marketing lead? Because that's what I do. I actually asked my friends and family, like, if I was an animal, what would I be? And I got so many different answers. But I'm gonna pick my favorite, which is otter, because I love otters. They're so cute. They love snuggles. Like, if you're ever sad, do yourself a favor and look up otters holding hands, because it's just the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life. Yeah, so I'm just like your friendly book otter Elham.
I love that. Friendly book otter Elham. I'm changing your name in my phone to that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for asking people. It's good to know. Emily from Biblioasis, why don't we hear what animal you would be?
Hey everyone, I'm Emily from Biblioasis. Our claim to fame is probably having a few titles that make the Booker shortlist. You might know Ducks, Newburyport. You might know Case Study by Graham McCary Burnett. That's us. Stay tuned for more on that. My animal, I also asked a few people. I'm a pretty serious long distance runner, so I got a lot of antelope, cheetah, and ostrich, which I didn't know were like great runners. But I'm gonna go with antelope because they're cute, and also they're always surrounded by their friends and family, which is kind of me too.
That's so sweet. I love that. Thank you, Antelope Emily. It's great to have Biblioasis here tonight. Let's hear from James at Coach House next.
Hello. Yeah, I'm James Lindsay. I'm from Coach House Books. I'm the publicist there. We are based in Toronto, Canada. We've been around since 1965. We print all of our own books as well as publish them. You may know us from The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Meyer, which is won the Giller Prize and is finalist for the inaugural Carol Shields Prize for creative writing as well. If I was an animal, I'm thinking I would be a manatee. They are good-natured, friendly, slow-moving, bearded, and they hate cold water. It'll kill them even. They just don't get out of there. So I'm going with manatee.
That is a very informed choice, James. Thank you. I like that. Well done. Catherine, let's hear from you at Groundwood.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Catherine. I'm the US Sales Associate at House of Anansi Press and Groundwood Books. I'll be representing the Groundwood side of the company tonight, and my colleague Natasha will be representing Anansi. Groundwood was founded in 1978 and is based in Toronto, and we publish children's books for all ages. You might know us for Deborah Ellis's books like the Breadwinner series, for Sarah O'Leary and Kin Lang's A Family is a Family is a Family, and Sydney Smith's Sidewalk Flowers. So my friends compared me to my own dog, who is a Springer Spaniel, and it was mostly because I have bursts of energy, but then crash really hard.
That is a pretty good trait. I love that. Thanks, Catherine. Cass, how about you from Anansi?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Berry. I'm the Western Canada account manager for House of Anansi Press and Groundwood Books. I'll be presenting for the Anansi side of things tonight. House of Anansi was founded in Toronto in 1967. We publish literary and commercial fiction, nonfiction, cookbooks, poetry, a wide range. You might know us for books like Tanya Talaga's Seven Fallen Feathers or Making Gail Cole's Small Game Hunting at the local Coward Gun Club. Oh, and I think I'm the only one who maybe didn't go ask my friends. Maybe I didn't want to know. But if I had to guess what animal they would say I am, it would probably be like one of those really short-haired little dogs that's always wearing sweaters and only likes fair weather, like a Chihuahua, because I get cold really easily. And on that note, I'm very glad it's spring, or at least on the West Coast it is. I heard it was maybe snowing out east.
It was snowing. It was, but you would be set with your little sweater, and I love little dog shoes too. I think they're so charming. Good choice. And last but not least, we have Bailey from Annick.
Hi everyone, my name is Bailey and I'm the Digital Marketing Associate at Annick Press. Annick is an independent children's publisher based in Toronto that was founded in 1975 by Anne Milliard and Rick Wilkes. We publish all kinds of kids' books, but are perhaps the most famous for publishing Robert Munsch titles, including our most beloved Paperback Princess. And I did also ask my friends what animal I would be, and it was a bit of a mixed bag. But the most popular answer, I think, was a flamingo, because my signature color is pink, but I also got a dyed pink poodle as an answer, and I'm not sure if I should be offended by that or not. Have not decided yet. So that is what the most popular answer was.
I don't think that requires any offense. I think those are both super good choices. I think this was a great way to kick off our spring event, to hear about cool animals, and I'm only going to picture you guys as all these animals for the rest of our lives. So thank you for that. But it's Tuesday and it is the very best night of the week to talk about books. So let's get right into it. Please keep an eye on the chat, as Christina is going to share links to the ARC request form and to the e-catalogs for you all to take a look at tonight while we're chatting. I'm really glad we're doing this event right now, because I'm really in a bit of a reading slump, like I have to admit to you guys. And we've done a few of these events together, and I think you all know what I like to read by now. So I would like for you to sound me and every reader in a slump on something. Anything on your list this season that you think would be great for us slump people right now. James, what does Coach House have for me?
I have a book that I don't think many people in this part of the world have heard of, but we're trying to change that. It's called Grimish by Michael Winkler. This is an Australian book. It was originally self-published, and it was the first self-published book to be a finalist for the Miles Franklin Award, which is a national writing prize in Australia. So it was a big, big deal. Essentially, this was too weird for a lot of the publishers in Australia, and Michael had to go about this route to publish. This is his first book he's ever published. He's done some academic writing and some journalism, but this is his lifelong project. He's in his 70s now to publish this book. It's about a guy named Joe Grigg, Grimm, who was a real person. He was a boxer, an Italian-American boxer who visited Australia in the early 20th century and went on a tour there doing fights, except he wasn't a very good boxer at all. In fact, he was terrible. He was just very good at getting beaten up. He couldn't knock him down. He would just stay in the ring and get pummeled for hours. It was very frustrating, but people would go up and see this show. So this is a fictionalized version of Michael, who's a failed author, and he's sitting on a pile of books, and his son is talking to him. He's trying to interview him about the life of Joe Grimm. Michael calls this an exploded nonfiction book. Everything about Joe Grimm in here is true for the most part, but Michael has fictionalized the entire setting where he himself, he's not nearly this old, but old enough to like see Joe Grimm in person. He's describing the fights. At one point, he gets lost in the interior of Australia with Joe Grimm and a talking goat who can't stop swearing. This is an incredible book. This is a book about violence. This is a book about sports and boxing and history, about what makes fiction and nonfiction. It's also a book about Australia and nationalism and colonialism. Michael manages to cram an incredible amount of stuff in this book. It's a fantastic read. It's got incredible endorsements already from people like J.M. Coetzee, Laurie Jones, Helen Gardner, and even The Guardian has given this some early press. We're getting some great reviews in the States, upcoming from the Washington Post and some other outlets. Cannot recommend this enough. You have not read a book like this, I promise you. Grimmish by Michael Winkler. Out next week.
Out next week. I'm sold. I am sold on Grimmish. Thank you. And Coach House has very wonderful shipping. So thank you, James, for that. Let's hear from Anansi. What do you have to get us out of a reading slump?
I first off have to compliment the term slump people, because that was a good one. I'm going to start using it. So what I would recommend is short stories. Great to get you out of a reading slump, just a little bit at a time. The Private Apartments by Idmon Nur Omar. Idmon is from Calgary, and this is publishing May 2nd. Idmon is a really fantastic writer to watch. We had a lot of competition over this manuscript from other independent presses, and we also have a novel under contract now, which I'm so excited about because I devoured this. These are linked stories depicting the Somali immigrant experience with a particular focus on women. And the stories take place over 3 decades. They start in 1991, which is the beginning of the Somali Civil War. And they're set all over the world. We go from Rome to London, the Netherlands, Dubai, Toronto. The stories are in chronological order, and there's also recurring characters. So if you are a reader who doesn't typically reach for short stories, I would still recommend this one. So for example, in one story, there are 3 single mothers who form this really deep friendship in a subsidized townhouse complex. And for entertainment, they start watching burned copies of other people's wedding videos, just like strangers' wedding videos. And then we get another story where we watch the marriage then unfold for one of those couples. So Idmon Nur Omar was born in Rome and immigrated to Canada in 1991, and she's been mentored by Dion Brand and Madeleine Tien, and that definitely shows in the quality of writing here. It really is fantastic.
I am definitely a short story person as well as a slump person. So that is a fantastic choice. Thank you. Annick, what do you have to get us slump people back to reading?
Stephanie, I mean, we work together, so I think I know you pretty well, and I might be able to get you out of this slump. And if there's one thing I know about you, and I think I know this about probably several people in the audience, is you love our picture book that came out a couple of years ago called Sama the Syrian Chef. And I have news for you that we have an upcoming series featuring Salma herself, an early reader chapter book series that will follow Salma on continuing adventures, and we'll learn all about what she's been up to since the last time we spoke to her. Well, the first book, titled Salma Makes a Home, comes out on May 9th and is aimed at ages 6 to 9, so you only have a couple more weeks to wait, so get it on your list. In this book, Salma's dad is finally going to join her family in their new home in Canada, and Salma is just so happy for her dad to be there. But she starts to get worried because her father seems to miss Syria a whole lot, and she thinks, what if Baba wants to leave us and go back to Syria? So she throws herself into showing him all the wonderful things about Canada. She shows him all around Vancouver and starts to teach him English. But while she spends more time with him, she realizes she misses Syria too. And Salma has to grapple with this understanding of what is a home. And I think that something she begins to learn is how home is not just where your address is or where your home is. It is much, much more than that. And something that I really, really love about this book, and what I think the author Danny Ramadan, who I know we all love, really gets, is to show complex emotions to young readers in a way that really is easy for them to understand, but is also good for readers of all ages. And I think that we all want to feel a sense of belonging in home, even if we can't directly relate to the immigrant experience. I think we can all relate to Salma's anxiety about belonging and finding somewhere to belong. I also have to give a special shout out to the illustrator Anna Braun, whose playful illustrations perfectly partner Danny's narrative and lend the story even more impact. So if you loved Salma the Syrian chef just as much as Stephanie, you will love the adventures that Salma gets up to in this book and all of the books coming out soon. And I'm so excited for everyone to read it.
Oh, thank you, Bailey. And it's true, I do love Salma, and I do love a series. So that is a 10 out of 10 choice to get us out of a reading slump. Thank you. Groundwood, what do you have to get us out of a reading slump?
To get you out of your reading slump, I have Catch Me If I Fall. This is a middle grade novel by Barry Johnsberg, who's a widely acclaimed YA and middle grade author in Australia. And this will get you out of your slump because there's a really big twist, a twist master twist. It's so good. And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who wants to read it after this. But so, yeah, this novel is set in a future Australia where climate change has flooded the coast, killed off huge swaths of the population, and caused droughts, famine, and extreme poverty. But the twins, Ashley and Aiden, don't have to worry about all of that because they are privileged. Their mother's a famous research and developer of artificial intelligence, and their family is very well off. So after a series of events, which includes one of the twins, Aiden, getting injured, Ash starts to notice that her twin brother is acting differently, and she finds out the truth is a lot more sinister than just an injury or the two twins starting to grow apart. And then comes the twist, which I'm not going to spoil in case people want to read it, but I'll just say that it involves the twins' mom's work in artificial intelligence. There's also a great sense of menace encroaching at the edges of this story. The rich are terrified of the poor attacking their wealth. The UV levels are so high that most days they can't even go outside, and extreme weather events are very common. It's gripping, character-driven, dystopian middle grade novel, but it's the kind of dystopia that feels like right around the corner, and a future that might not be so far away. And so that's Catch Me As I Fall. Catch Me If I Fall.
I definitely want to read that one. I love a good twist and Twistmaster in the description. Wonderful. Thank you, Catherine. Emily, what do you have from Biblioasis to get us out of our slump?
So the book on our list that got me out of a reading slump and also got me out of a writing slump is On Writing and Failure by Stephen Marsh, which came out back in February. This brief but really powerful little book is the latest in our Field Note series. Marsh basically goes through a roster of famous literary figures from 8th century poets to Herman Melville, Toni Morrison, and reveals that basically all of them weren't able to make a living as a writer. And not only that, but even the most well-respected, prize-winning authors have well-documented cases of imposter syndrome. For Marsh, this is explained by the sheer ratio of success to failure, acceptance to rejection, and how every writer accruing successes, they're also behind closed doors getting dozens, if not hundreds more of rejections. There are quite a few books of this kind, I think, that try to debunk the idea of art and writing, but Marsh's is the first in my experience to be so candid about not only the failures of past writers, but the state of our current market, one that's inundated with more books than ever, in which even the most powerful journalistic pieces of writing are fleeting headlines in a never-ending flow of content. But it's not a pessimistic book. Writing is, after all, Marsh's vocation. He wants to illustrate that writing has always been defined by the stubbornness and sheer inexplicable will of writers that just keep going and create history. His advice to young writers is simply keep throwing yourselves at the door, which is something maybe slump people should do too. It's pithy, it's funny, it's sometimes really harsh, but overall it's a very moving book that changed the way I read and write, and think about the way that books make their way into the world. It also basically comes with a built-in reading list, so that can be good for the slump people too.
That is awesome for the slump people. Thank you. Yeah, and those quick books too, they're so good to get you through and get you to the next one quickly. So thank you, Emily. Alham, what do you have from ECW to help get us out of our slump?
So when you're in a reading slump, I think that what you're looking for is a book with a really good hook, something that's going to grab you and just keep you engaged and thinking. And I have the perfect book for that. It is The Trauma Beat, A Case for Rethinking the Business of Bad News by Tamara Cherry. A go-to genre for sort of exiting reading slumps, I think, would be true crime. This is kind of the opposite, but it is just as engaging and it is just as good. The Trauma Beat combines journalism and memoir to create this really eye-opening expose about the link between media coverage and trauma. The author, Tamara, spent 15 years as a crime reporter in some of Canada's biggest newsrooms, and now she actually runs her own communications company that advocates for victims. In this book, you're following her journey as she is working her crime beat, and she starts to notice that the toll the job is taking, not just on her, but also on her colleagues. She starts to learn about trauma-informed journalism, and now she's actively working to demand a better way in how we cover crime in the media, because the fact of the matter is it's really not good. Whether you're looking at like up to the minute interviews where people are walking out off of crime scenes and facing a wall of cameras and microphones, or really dogged journalism, where journalists are constantly like asking for information and wanting questions and sound bites. Even amateur true crime podcasts only reopen old wounds for a lot of people. And now we have Netflix series that don't do anything better. So on top of this, you have the journalists on the other side who are constantly inundated with images that only traumatize them and then re-traumatize the victims. Whether you're talking about murders or car crashes or sexual violence, it's just a system that's set up to fail both victims and journalists. And so in the Trauma Beat, you are getting really detailed research with interviews with over 100 survivors who are able to tell their own stories and their own voices. Insights from Tamara and other journalists, and in just like a really raw and reflective and empathic way that will get you thinking, and it will really stay with you. So I really recommend The Trauma Beat by Tamara Cherry.
Thank you, Elham. That's fascinating. I have a little notepad going with notes for all of these titles that you're giving me, and I have the ARC request form that's like completely full. So thank you, everyone, for helping me get out of my reading slump. I think, we were talking about the weather a bit earlier, and something about spring just screams picture books, doesn't it? Like just screams it right in your face. I think it's the bright colors and the warmer weather. Toronto was hot this weekend and now we're snowing. But I'm wondering for my colleagues in children's publishing, if you can share with all of us tonight an illustrator that you're particularly excited to have on your list this winter spring season, and why. We have Christina sharing her screen with us so we can see this beautiful artwork, and let's start with Groundwood, please.
Okay, I was so happy for a question that would show off these beautiful illustrations. So these are illustrations from The Invitation, written by Stacey May Fowles and illustrated by Mary LaFrance. Stacey May Fowles is well known in the literary scene, and this is her debut picture book. And Mary LaFrance is an award-winning illustrator, and her illustrations in this book are stunning. They really transport you to this dreamy, magical world that she's created, and her interpretation of the characters is so funny and enchanting, from the main character Fern's leafy and emotive hair to the scowling bear with a sweet tooth. So this story is about anxiety and worry and the habit of catastrophizing. Our main character is a magical wood creature named Fern. And one day Fern opens her mailbox to find a bright yellow envelope. It's enticing, but it's unexpected. So instead of opening it right away, Fern worries about it. She paces her front yard, wondering what's inside. And the longer she waits to open it, the more worried she feels. Then her friend Fawn comes along and gently encourages her to open it. Inside, she finds an invitation to a super special surprise exhibition at the museum. But Fern also doesn't like surprises, so that opens up a whole new can of worries. Fawn offers to accompany her to the party, and the two set off walking through the forest. And as they walk, Fern imagines all the things that could go wrong at the party. Fawn very sweetly listens to Fern's worries and offers solutions. Then they get to the party and they find out it's a wonderful surprise party, and they dance the night away. And when Fern returns home, she peeks in her mailbox, but this time without the trepidation from before. She even seems a little bit excited this time. It's a fun, sweet story that addresses mental health in a way that's accessible to kids. And it's also a very empathetic portrayal of what it's like to live with anxiety, which the author has personally experienced. So she's able to depict these feelings very sensitively and knowingly. It has a starred review from Forward, and while this is a children's book, I also found it a perfect book for adults, and especially during tax season. And that's the invitation.
That's a lovely book for adults, and I love these animals walking on two legs. I can't stop looking at them. They're so charming. Thank you, Catherine. Let's hear from Annick next for an illustrator you're excited to have on your list.
Sure. So the book that instantly sprang to my mind when you asked about illustrations was our new picture book, Walking Together, written by Elder Albert D. Marshall and Louisa Monty, with illustrations from Emily Kawagashig. Emily is an Anishinaabe artist and visual storyteller. Her illustrations are flowing, bold, and layered, and offer a bright, clear description of the heart of the story, and truly welcome the youngest of readers to grasp the importance of developing a meaningful relationship with the natural world. When she was working on the illustrations, she was really inspired by her son. They would spend time outside, and she said she was looking through the world through the eyes of him, which it really informed the art for her book. And like, seriously, how gorgeous are these illustrations? So the book follows young children connecting to nature as their teacher. We see them in different scenarios and seasons with beautiful images of animals and nature throughout. In Walking Together, both through the text and illustrations, readers are introduced to the idea of Etowoptimuk, or two-eyed seeing, which is the gift of multiple perspectives in the Mi'kmaq language. In addition, this book is also rooted in the Mi'kmaq notion of Nedowoptim version, which is their indigenous version of sustainability, which means to protect Mother Earth for the ancestors and for the present, and for generations to come. This is the perfect book to read during Earth Month, which we're in right now, and think about how we are connected to the world around us and our responsibility to keep it safe. I have not stopped thinking about this book since I finished it, and I think it will stick with me for a very long time. I think it deserves a spot on every single person's bookshelf. Walking Together is aimed at readers 4 to 7 and was released on April 4th in Canada and will hit shelves in the States on May 2nd.
Thank you, Bailey. Emily is just such a talented artist, and these were both really gorgeous titles. There's such talent for these picture book illustrators. So thank you again, both Bailey and Catherine, for sharing wonderful and thoughtful books with us tonight. Next up, we have an extra special video from our friends at House of Anansi that we can take a watch together.
Hey, I'm Rachel, author of River Meets the Sea, a contemporary Canadian seafaring epic which follows the seemingly separate timelines of a white-passing Indigenous foster child in 1940s Vancouver and an Afro-Tamil immigrant actually born in the middle of the ocean on a merchant ship who settles in the suburbs of Nanaimo in the 70s. The novel traces the seemingly separate lives of these spirited young men and their ever-elusive connection to water until they inevitably cross paths, revealing rich, lesser-known Canadian histories along the way. My novel is inspired by the lives of real people from Turtle Island, actually my grandfather and my father, and seeks to illuminate the interconnectedness of humanity and our lifeblood, the dynamic element of water. At the heart of this novel is the desire to foster unity between different generations and demographics, to bring much-needed representation for those with braided identities, and to challenge the often monolithically delineated categories of black and white. River Meets the Sea is a novel for everyone, but especially those who struggle to answer the question, where are you from?
Thank you to Rachel for discussing her novel River Meets the Sea with us, publishing on May 30th from House of Anansi. That's also on my list. I'm jotting things down here tonight. Like I said earlier, I was loving these milder temps and the sunlight, except not today when we had sun and gray skies, because that means we can head out to the lake soon and we can be on the water. So I'm wondering, all of my pals here tonight, what are you going to be reading on your summer holiday this year? I'm really excited to know everyone's reads. Emily, why don't we start with you for what you're reading this holiday?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to read on vacations is a good literary thriller, a book like that you can't put down until it's done. So I have The Country of To'o by Rodrigo Ray Rosa, translated from Spanish by Stephen Hennigan, which comes out July 11th. And it is definitely one of those books. It's one of our most exciting translations of this year. Basically, it's a novel about the insidiousness of corrupt governments. Every character in the novel has been exploited, directly or indirectly, by the widespread political violence in Guatemala. In an unnamed but unmistakably Guatemalan city, the narrator follows El Cobra, a troubled hitman, and Polo, the human rights activist he has been assigned to kill, as both characters grapple with corruption and death. When, for the first time in his criminal career, El Cobra's conscience gives him pause, he seeks refuge among a Mayan community on the outskirts of the city, who themselves are preparing to defend their land from encroaching oil companies. Dealing directly with really current and unfolding issues in Guatemala's government, and more broadly with themes of climate change, corruption, paranoia, I think this is such an important and enthralling example of how expansive thriller novels can be. It has all the fun and fast pace of like an eco thriller, but ultimately it is an intergenerational portrait of revisionist thinkers, and also an exploration of what leads people towards activism and what leads activists towards revolution. If you've read like Roberto Bolaño, Paul Bowles, Clarice Lispector, this is definitely for you.
Thank you, Emily. James, what do you have for us from Coach House for our holiday read?
I have a fun pastoral, creepy, possibly modern Gothic, Sing Nightingale by Marie-Hélène Potois, translated by Rhonda Mullins, who you may know from her translation of Suzanne, which was a finalist for Canada Reads. She's one of our main translators. This book did quite well when it came out originally in Quebec. It's translated from French. It's about a strange house called Malmaison, which is in a countryside that may be here, it may be somewhere else. And generations of just horrible men have cast women out into the surrounding wilderness around there for minor anything, any excuse they can. Our protagonists are a father and son who are so rich they don't need to be good at anything and live in this beautiful stately manor house and have a bunch of silly parties all the time and are living this very silly life, when this woman comes out of the forest, and she's the manifestation of all the spurred women who have been cast away over the years, and she comes to reap a revenge. But she is promising to make all their feasts more sumptuous, the crops more ripe, everything that she promises to use her magic for good, but she is here for other purposes. That is just the setup for it. It's a beautiful pastoral novel, which descriptions of the countryside. Marie-Hélène was traveling in France when she wrote this, so there's really beautiful descriptions of country, of the parties, which all these big feasts at. There's some hot air balloon travel back and forth, because why not? It's a beautiful book. It reminds me a lot of Atessa Moshfegh's last book, La Bona, but way less gross. It's just in this like strange middle period of time where you can drift through to these parties, waiting for someone to reap their revenge. It's a little Angela Carter if she was on vacation, maybe Shirley Jackson on holiday kind of thing. We've had incredible reviews for this already, including, I have to look at my notes for it, there's so many, Publishers Weekly, Washington Post, Forward Reviews, Toronto Star, Montreal Review of Books, Book List, and Locust Magazine most recently. This is a very fun book to get lost in. You want to, once you're in this world, you want to stay in it, where there's horrible people being punished by magic from the woods. Beautiful book, beautiful descriptions of nature and parties and food. Sing Nightingale, out now.
I like Shirley Jackson on holiday and Moshfegh, but not gross. Those are my favorite descriptions. Thank you, James. That'll be great for our little beach read. Next, we have ECW. What do you have for us Elham?
So much like Emily, I also have a literary thriller for you. So I think that once you've read The Country of To'o, right after that, you should definitely pick up Sunsetter by Curtis LeBlanc. This is, like I said, also a very fast-paced literary thriller, but I like that it's kind of on a bit of a micro community scale, whereas The Country of To'o is dealing with big politics. This is much smaller local politics and local corruption. Sam Weeb, who's a fellow thriller writer, award winner, called it high grade prairie noir, which I really love as a description. On the surface, this is the perfect cabin read. It's a very cool mystery with angry teenagers set in a small town where things are a lot eviler than they seem, but it's also dealing with much deeper themes like the opioid crisis, police brutality, the decimation of small towns because of late stage capitalism, but also the death at the heart of it is that very dangerous restlessness of the youth who live in these small towns and kind of feel like all of their opportunities have been stripped away from them. The town that this is set in is a fictional one. It's called Perrin, and every year the Sunsetter Rodeo in Midway comes and it takes over the town. It's like the highlight of the year. Two teens, Dallin and Hannah, are kind of thrown together when on the opening night of the rodeo, a pair of suspicious murders kind of bring their lives together. And so driven by their grief and their anger, they decide that they're going to do whatever it takes to uncover the criminal truth about their town. And they find that it brings them up against some very formidable enemies. The novel is set over 3 days, and I love a book that's set like in a very specific, very short amount of time. It makes it's such a great driver of plot. And it weaves together Dallin and Hannah's perspectives with a corrupt police deputy. And the result is just this incredibly taut, very cinematic, explosive thriller that will surprise you in a lot of ways, and it'll keep you hooked up until the very end. That is Sunsetter by Curtis LeBlanc, out next week.
Thank you, Elham. And I like that we can pair it with another title here tonight. Well done, Biblioasis and ECW. You guys are doing good things for our reading lists. House of Anansi, what do you have, Tass?
Well, I brought more short stories because that's you know what, that's what we have right now is some really, really strong short story collections. So this is just published March 14th. It's called Chrysalis by Anuja Varghese, and it's a debut feminist short story collection that looks at the ways in which women are robbed of power and the journeys that they undertake to reclaim it. A lot of these stories draw on folklore, fairy tale, and magic realism. I was laughing to myself a bit when James described Sing Nightingale as Angela Carter on vacation, because I always describe this one as Angela Carter-esque as well, but centering women of color. So we have like Cinderella against the backdrop of a shopping mall about to be hit by a meteor. There's other stories that are more modern Gothic. There's a house with mysterious and malevolent powers. There's also more realist explorations of queerness and pushing back against cultural expectations in the South Asian community. And for example, there's like a heartwarming story about a trans character who finds chosen family. Our short fiction right now, you might have noticed from the last one, it's all published in this very small, lightweight format. It's really easy to tuck in a bag and read on the go. You can also like hold them open with one hand so easily, which I have fallen in love with. My point being that you can have a daiquiri in the other hand, or whatever it is you like to drink when you're on vacation.
You will see me at the lake with a daiquiri and chrysalis, because that's perfect. Thank you. There's nothing like a good beach read, right? Like Emily Henry's got nothing on us tonight. So thank you everyone for sharing your fantastic holiday reads with us. And this proves that the inside stuff is just as important as the outside stuff, but we know everybody judges a book by its cover. I know I do, I'll be honest with you. So everyone, one of my favorite questions to hear is, what is your favorite cover on your list this season? And I will give you bonus points if you have an extra fun fact about it. Points are arbitrary though, so that you don't win anything. Bailey, what's your favorite cover at Annick this season?
So the book I chose for my favorite cover of the season is Space on Earth, How Thinking Like an Astronaut Can Help Save the Planet by Dr. Dave Williams and Linda Presson, with illustrations from Cho Huaru. And I'm still obsessed with the way this cover came together. I think it like perfectly encapsulates the two intersections of the book, you know, space and Earth. Now I don't exactly have a fun fact about the cover, but I do know a couple fun facts about the illustrator. Now, I have it on good authority that he has a white Bichon and he was named after a Star Wars Sith Lord, which I think is hilarious. I love picturing a white, small, crusty little white dog named after an evil Star Wars character. But on that note, he also told me that the best advice he's ever received for growing as an illustrator was to stop using the eraser. And if you don't like the drawing, just leave it be and move on to the next one and try again. Because eventually you'll have sketchbooks full of amazing illustrations, which, as we can see here, is obviously great advice because this is a wonderful cover. Okay, so back to the book. So who could imagine that an idea born on the space station would help sustain our planet? Astronauts living on the International Space Station have to protect their resources because their lives depend on it. So they learn to conserve water, air, food, energy, and waste, and these efforts have in turn led to amazing and innovative ideas for air quality, food production, and water purification here on Earth. The book has vivid and energetic illustrations, photographs, and Dr. Dave's experiments on key topics. So readers will learn about technological innovations such as waterless toilets and the world's tallest air purification tower. And I learned so many new things while reading Space on Earth. And I think this is another perfect book for Earth Month, sensing a theme here. And because it highlights so many ways that we can help save our planet. So, and one of my favorite parts of the book is the aforementioned experiments, because I think they really inspire participation and help you understand how all of the technology mentioned throughout the book works and really inspires you to take action. For example, there's some instructions for how to create your own water purifier at home inspired by the water purification system on the International Space Station. And I know that I'm never going to be in the International Space Station, so this is a wonderful thing to learn. So Space on Earth is aimed at readers 10 to 14 and comes out on May 9th in Canada and June 6th in the US.
Thank you. That's a beautiful art. And as someone who would also never be on the International Space Station, I also will learn a lot from this. And I did learn a lot. So thank you, Bailey. Next, we have Groundwood. What is your favorite cover, Catherine?
Okay, so this is the cover for Happy Birthday to Me. This is one of my absolute favorites because I think it's just so funny and so accurate. Like, look at this kid. This is a sugar high, birthday present high kid on their birthday. And I'll tell you a little bit about the story to explain how we got here. So in this story, a child wakes up feeling super excited because it's the best day of the year, her birthday. And to start the story off in a very hilarious spread, she startles her mom awake by blowing one of those party whistles in her face. I don't know if you can see this. What a way to wake up. So wakes up her mom and picks out the perfect outfit and then goes to greet her guests. Then as the party goes on, she experiences a whole range of emotions. She feels shy, daring, curious, disappointed, jealous, impatient, and of course, older and wiser. The party gets more and more chaotic, and so does the birthday girl, and eventually all these feelings start to feel a bit unmanageable. So at this point, her mom recognizes that she is overwhelmed and scoops her up, and the two take a quiet moment together. When she's reset a little bit, her mom asks her how it feels to be a year older, and the kid says, "I feel the same, I feel like me." So the story also doesn't specify the child's age, and it makes for a great birthday book for a whole range of ages. It's by Tao Lam, the best-selling creator of My Cat Looks Like a Dad, Skunk on a String, and many more. Her picture books consistently receive starred reviews. This one has a star from Kirkus. And my fun fact for bonus points, the illustrations are in bright paper collage with lots of hidden humor, including a cat that gets into all sorts of trouble throughout the party. Lastly, there's lovely representation amongst the children attending the party, and we get to see children of all different backgrounds and abilities.
I love this cover. I love that she's missing a tooth. I love a mischievous cat. This is a great choice, Catherine. Thank you so much. Biblioasis, Emily, what do you have for a beautiful cover for us? Oh my goodness, wow.
Okay, so this one's pretty easy for me. The cover is All Things Move. It's quite possibly the most beautiful Biblioasis book to date, inside and out. It's John Berger meets Sebald meets your favorite memoirist. It's a hybrid memoir and piece of art criticism from Jeannie Marshall, who's a Canadian expat, about her relationship to the Sistine Chapel, which she avoided for the first decade that she lived in Rome. She didn't want to deal with the tourism, the pressure to not only be able to see the frescoes clearly, but to understand them. When her mother died, though, she reconsidered and quickly became enthralled with the frescoes, but also the act of trying to see a great work of art beyond all of the cultural scaffolding that surrounds it. She began visiting the chapel frequently, studying its frescoes, but also the other people in the chapel, how they craned their necks, snapped their photos, and tried to see. I've not been to the Sistine Chapel, but I've stood at the edge of a very crowded Grand Canyon and squinted at that tiny, tiny, tiny glass encased Mona Lisa. Read Anna Karenina, searching for what writers before me found in it. So I think anyone who's felt pressured or unsure of what to do in the front of something great will be gut punched by this one in the best way. The cover was designed by Natalie Olson, who takes a close-up of a figure of special importance in the book, the Libyan Sibyl, and splatters the title across it. The merging of the ancient and the contemporary here is a perfect representation of how well this book tracks and considers and wonders about the way great art impacts humanity across centuries, but also moves us individually. The cover also matches the interior, which is scattered with these stunning images of not only the chapel, but of the streets and graffiti of Rome. And my fun fact, which we learned in the process of designing this cover, is that copyright law wildly changes depending on when a painting was restored. So a very similar image of this Sibyl taken in one year could be public domain, and the next year, if anything was restored on it, it could be a few $1,000s. So we went down some cool copyright rabbit holes with this one.
That is fascinating. It is just as fascinating as beautiful as this cover is. Thank you, Emily. I'm going to ask everyone for fun facts for the rest of my life. So this is very rewarding for me. And Nancy, let's hear what title you have, Tass, and your fun fact.
So I'm going to talk more about River Meets the Sea. We saw an introduction from Rachel a little bit earlier. I think this is such a strong cover. It really encapsulates what the book is about, which is two young men who are separated by time and place, but they're really connected through their relationship to water, to the river and the sea. Rachel Morthy grew up in BC. She now lives in Switzerland. She's a woman of mixed ancestry, which she described in the video. Her mission is to provide representation for people with complicated backgrounds that aren't easily summed up by limiting categories of Black and white. That mission is very clear in the novel. The chapters alternate between the life stories of two men and explore race, identity, and belonging. So we first meet Ronnie, who is a white passing Indigenous foster child living in 1940s Vancouver. And through most of his story, he doesn't know who his parents are. He feels most connected to his mother when he's near the Stalo River, and he grows up there catching eulachon fish and running on dangerous log booms. He eventually gets into jive in Hogan's Alley, and then ends up part of a East Van's notorious Clark Park gang. Our second protagonist, Chandra, is growing up in the 1970s in the suburbs of Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. And he is a teenage immigrant from Sri Lanka, described as having skin like a charred eggplant. He struggles to grow up in the white suburbs, but at a very young age, he ends up finding his haven, both swimming and surfing in the Salish Sea. So the two stories intersect when Chandra actually later begins dating Ronnie's daughter, and these two protagonists meet for the first time. They at first don't get along at all, but they eventually do find some healing in each other's stories. It's really beautiful. I devoured this novel. I think Rachel's prose is stunning, and I can't recommend it enough. It's one of my all-time favorites from Anansi.
It is a beautiful cover, and it sounds like the story is just as beautiful. Thank you, Tass. It's on my list. Elham, what does ECW have that's your favorite cover this season?
I have to say that our design team has been absolutely killing it this season, and fall is going to be amazing too. So it was really hard for me to pick a cover, but I had to go with The Winter Night by Jess Battis. I'm so obsessed with this cover. This is a modern Arthurian retelling that blends queer, upbeat urban fantasy with a mystery, where the Knights of the Round Table are reincarnated. They're alive in Vancouver, in contemporary Vancouver, that is until someone starts killing them. And so it's up to a Valkyrie named Hildy and the reincarnation of Sir Gawain, an autistic college student named Wayne, to team up and figure out who's doing it before the bodies start piling up. So one of my new favorite things to do is to go into like our database, find the names of the cover artists and just like look them up. That's what I do when I'm supposed to be working. I'm just looking at really beautiful art. And that's how I found David Curtis, who's the cover artist for this book. But I found that he's done also a lot of like really famous, gorgeous covers that you've probably seen before. He designed As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows by Zulfa Katuh and Gallant by Victoria Schwab. And while I was like going through his social media, I found that he had actually posted a bunch of early drafts for this cover, which you can see on the next slide. So when I saw these, I was going through them, and so I had to reach out to our artistic director, Jessica Albert, and ask her, like, they're so different. What did you give him? What was the brief? And what were we looking for? And she told me that we wanted a cover that sort of combined the medieval lore side of the book with the modern urban setting, and to make sure that that really came through, we wanted a cover that hinted at the crossover potential for this book, because Wayne is a college student and a lot of the book is set in a college. There is a bit of like really late teenager YA crossover in terms of readership. And also we wanted it to feature some of the key elements and symbols in the story, like a tattered piece of green fabric that's meant to represent the green sash from the medieval poem, stained glass, runes, drops of blood, the Vancouver skyline, or an axe. And actually, for a really long time, that fifth cover that you see, the black one with the gorgeous stained glass, that was the cover. That was the original cover about a year ago. And I really liked that one. But especially because, like, if you look really closely, you can see that the stained glass is actually the characters, and the rainbow color is meant to hint at, like, the book is just stacked with queer characters, and there's a ton of representation in it. And so it let readers know that that would be in there. But what the team found was that the more stuff was the book cover was just getting a little bit busy. And so they decided to scrap it, start from scratch, and ended up going with the cover that you see now. And the reason that they went with this one, she said that it calls back to the medieval lore in that lettering, but it makes it really cool with that graffiti style. We also thought that the colors were much more appropriate to that Winter Night title. And if you look really closely, you see that there are a lot of Easter eggs in the cover too. There are holly berries, you can see the city skyline, there's a fox that is very relevant. And so the characters felt a little bit less necessary to represent, rather than the overall idea of this being an Arthurian reimagining. This was a really tough cover, but we think we got it right in the end, and I'm super, super happy with it. And it's a really fun, I think the bright white cover with the pops of orange hint at that like really bright, fun medieval retelling. There are, like I said, like a lot of there's great queer representation. The author, Jess Battis, is actually a professor at the University of Regina, where they teach queer and trans studies, representations of neurodiversity in pop culture and medieval literature, and all of those things feature very prominently in this book. It's a fantastic, fun time. So you should definitely pick up The Winter Night, which is out now.
That is a fantastic cover and worth all the work. And Michelle and Kirsten in the chat, I totally agree with you that it's great to know this insider info. So thank you, Elhan. Our last beautiful cover tonight is going to come from Coach House. James, what do you have for us?
Hey, I don't think I have that much insider information, but I do have some. This is Slows Twice by T. Liam, which is the pen name for Tess Liam. You may know from their previous book, Obits, which won the Gerald Lampert Award in Canada, and is a huge touchstone for young poets here. So this is a highly, highly anticipated new book. If I were to compare this book to any other poet, I might say like Lisa Robertson, or some, maybe even some are like the Blurbers, of which we have quite a lot, like Chen Chen, Hua Thien, Mariel Leung. Do we have any? Billy Ray Balcourt would be a good example too. This is a beautiful book. I really am a fan of stark covers like this. It's printed in a nice matte as well. I actually have the book here, so you can see there's no gloss. It shows really, really well. The cover art, this was designed by our managing editor, Crystal Sikma, but the painting is from an artist named Shazlin Rahman, who's a Toronto-based Malaysian-born artist. And this is from a series of paintings she did, all sort of two-tone like this, but they're all based off her grandmother's collections of sarongs from Malaysia. So what you're seeing is a sort of a pattern that, like the sarong pattern, is if it was sort of cast on the floor like fabric, and she paints that. Very, very beautiful cover. I really love how minimal it is. Really does justice to the poems, which are very simple, but at the same time very complicated and connected as well. They're all about Tess's Indonesian heritage, but also taking place within Canada as well. So they sort of mirror the two areas and bounce back and forth. Really, really great book. If you enjoy being challenged by poetry, especially intellectual poetry, I'd highly recommend this one.
A challenge and a beautiful cover. I love it. Thank you, James. Everyone gave us like the best covers that I've seen this season, hands down. So just for that, everyone gets an arbitrary bonus point. So thank you. We have one more short video for you tonight, and that is from a debut Annick author, Maya Amiot.
Hi, my name is Maya Mayao, and my contemporary YA debut, When It All Syncs Up, is out June 6th with Annick Press. When It All Syncs Up is about a ballerina who is on a journey to find her place within the world of traditional ballet. I'll be reading a short passage for you now. I stopped thinking about my choreo. I don't even know if I'm following it. It's just like last night. I'm moving without worrying about being good, without obsessing about getting every move right. Instead of losing myself in the music like I usually do, I'm finding all the things buried within me. All of the frustration and disappointment I jammed down every time I was passed over for a role. All of my yearning to be seen bubbles up and bursts out of me in a torrent of unfettered emotion.
Thanks to Maya for sharing that video with us tonight. When It All Syncs Up publishes from Annick Press on June 6th, and it recently received a Kirkus star, so that's very exciting. Our time talking about books passes so quickly, but I have one more question for my friends, and I hope we can get through it really, really quickly. So I'm a pretty emotional gal. I'm sure everyone knows this by now, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I'm wondering if you have a book on your list that stirs any emotions, absolutely any emotion at all, happy, sad, grouchy, and glad. I want to hear it. I want to feel it. Elham, let's start with you. What emotions does ECW have for me?
So the book that I have to talk about, a book that I'm absolutely in love with and obsessed with, is Denison Avenue by Christina Wong and Daniel Innes. If you want a book to make you cry, this is it. This is an absolutely wonderful, incredible book that's unlike anything ECW has ever done before. So on one side, this is a novella written by Christina, and then if you flip it right over on the other, you have this absolutely gorgeous textless graphic novel illustrated by Daniel. So Denison Avenue on the novella side is the story of an elderly woman named Wong Cho Sum who lives in Toronto's Chinatown Kensington Market neighborhood, and her husband has recently been killed. And so in order to cope with the death of her husband, she decides that she's going to wander her Chinatown neighborhood collecting bottles and cans. But what she finds instead is a neighborhood that's just radically different from the one that she remembers. And then when you flip over to the graphic novel side, you are literally following Wong Cho Sum walking with her as she's going through her neighborhood, seeing the neighborhood through her eyes and through her memory. It's actually set up in such a way where if you live in Toronto, and I know a lot of us do, you could start on the first illustration, you find that corner, and you could walk exactly as Wong Cho-sam walks. There are these wonderful, very, very detailed illustrations. And if you are familiar with the city, you will definitely find places that you know. One of the really interesting and sad things about this book is that Daniel said as he was drawing, he found that the buildings were changing so quickly, the neighborhood gentrifying so fast that he couldn't keep up. He had to start taking pictures of the buildings just to be able to capture them properly. This is a book that is about loss in so many different ways. It's about loss of a loved one, of course, but it's also about loss of a home, loss of community, and even loss of language. In the novella, all of the dialogue, particularly Wong Cho-sam's dialogue, is actually written in Toisan, which is a dialect of Chinese that was up until like the 1980s, the predominant language in Chinatowns across North America. But now it's a dying language because most of the older people who speak Toisan as a first language they're aging, they're passing away. The acquiring editor for this book, Jen Suk-Fong Lee, Toisan was the dialect that she spoke at home, and so this really it cut close for her. It is bilingual though, so don't worry, you will be able to understand it. It's just a really beautiful book that I think a lot of people will relate to. If your home is changing, if you find that your neighborhood is changing, like just last night, I found out that one of the mosques in my neighborhood was sold, and it's now going to be turned into a condominium, and I am so heartbroken. And so I'm going to be revisiting Denison Avenue for all of those feels, because I know that a lot of people they know what that experience is like as well. So definitely pick this one up. This is coming out in May.
Thank you, Elham. There are a lot of emotions. My university apartment was on Denison Avenue, so an added layer for me there. Thank you. Groundwood, what do you have that'll stir some emotions?
I feel like we're about to take everyone on a bit of a roller coaster at the end here. The book I wanted to talk about for this question is Peaceful Me, and the emotion that it hopefully stirs is peace. So this is the companion book to Angry Me, which might look familiar. We published Angry Me last spring, and it featured a little girl who explained all the different situations that caused her to feel angry. And now we have Peaceful Me coming this May. I couldn't find a copy in the office. This is just a postcard, but this is the cover. It will be the same trim size as Angry Me, and they'll look really nice next to one another. So this time our protagonist is a young boy who shares with us all the moments where he feels the most at peace and explains the different types of peaceful that he feels. Sometimes he's peaceful when he's with others, sometimes he's peaceful when he's alone, and sometimes he doesn't feel peaceful at all. So when that happens, he does things like taking a deep breath, finding a quiet place, imagining his favorite things. I love these books together because we have a book about feeling anger, which features a little girl, and a book about feeling peace and happiness, which features a little boy. And too often young children are taught that anger is unacceptable for girls and that boys should be all macho. So these books are so good at dismantling that narrative. And together they do a really good job of encouraging children to be aware of their feelings and emotions and appreciate them.
That is an awesome title, and it checks so many boxes, and I love the cover. It's really lovely. Thank you, Catherine. Bailey, what do you have from Annick to stir some emotions for us?
I think I'm continuing a little bit of a happy train here. So the book that brought me the strongest emotions from our list this season was Amio Sawapakone's. This tender and gorgeous debut picture book by author and illustrator S.J. Okamo brought me so much joy by transporting me back to my childhood, made me recall those long summer afternoons where you were wandering and exploring, and you would find that nice puff of dandelion, and you would blow it, and you would make that wish, and you would watch the seeds just blow off into the air to find a new place to land. Amio Sawapakone's is a celebration of the power and possibility of one of the most widespread and often overlooked plants, the dandelion. I know as we grow up, we kind of lose this magic of the dandelion. I know I'm not the only one who's guilty of cursing every time they see those little yellow plants popping up seemingly everywhere, no matter how hard you try to get rid of them. but we're trying to like reframe our idea of dandelions. So in this book, we follow a young protagonist and the dandelions through the seasons. The story is told predominantly in English, but has some plain Cree words sprinkled throughout. SJ's not to be missed author's note at the back of the book. She speaks about how she got the inspiration for the book while in the courtyard of the Banff Center in Alberta, looking at the beautiful mountains, pines, and wildlife, and initially thinking that the dandelions on the ground seemed somehow really out of place. But she kept watching and she saw the bees and the butterflies go about their business, treating them like any other flower, grateful for the nectar no matter the package. So one of my favorite messages from the book is how we can look at the perseverance of the dandelion as a reminder of our own inner strength, making our own way amongst the difficulties of life and embracing who we are and taking our time to grow and bloom when we are ready. Dandelions, they remind us that we are beautiful in our own way, even if others might not see that beauty. So maybe next time you see that pesky dandelion on your lawn, you might think a little differently about them. You'll want to come back to the story again and again to be transported and lulled by SJ's writing back to childhood to the magic of the dandelion. Amio Sawapakums comes out May 23rd.
Thanks, Bailey. As a dandelion lover, I am in full support of that title. So thanks very much. Emily, what does Biblioasis have for some feels for us?
Yeah, so when I first heard we were publishing this book, The Full Moon Whaling Chronicles, it was a book described to me as a monster mashup. No, a mashup monster piece, which actually meant Moby Dick meets Cyberpunk meets Teen Wolf meets Homer. I was ready for a really fun, light read, and I was not expecting to have a deep emotional response to it. But I did. I actually just finished it last night, and I can say that this is a book for everyone because it touches on so many important themes like friendship and family, climate change, and the role of art in an ever-changing society. It's set in 2070 in a world where Newfoundland is gone, Tokyo is underwater, smog obscures the sky completely, and the majority of humans have retreated to bonsai housing, hives that compress matter into a world that's losing ground. It follows Kay, an English literature student living in a pod above Montreal, as she becomes involved with a cult following of The Full Moon Whaling Chronicles, an old YA novel, which tells the story of whaling werewolves searching for a sea monster. Kay sets out on her own quest to find the reclusive author of the novel, a quest that takes her through obsessive fan subcultures, corporate conspiracy theories, and to the molecular limits of reality itself. As it might sound, this isn't actually bonkers story, but it is also one of the most affecting and terrifying climate novels I've read. Beyond all the quirk and the rhyme of the heroic couplets it's written in, the author Jason Guriel asks what art and specifically what literature is going to look like in a world where the only thing matters is survival. If you're looking to change up your reading list and really feel something, I can't recommend this one enough.
Thank you, Emily. I think that would get me out of a reading slump too. It would check like so many boxes tonight. So a perfect title. Thank you. Anansi, what do you have to get us out of a reading slump, Tass? Or not a reading slump, emotions. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I think this can do both. Also, it's getting late, so I'll try to be quick, but I want to talk about Kukum by Michel Jean. This is from Montreal. It's been translated by Susan Uriah, who's from Calgary. The French edition published in Quebec in 2020 and sold like bonkers. It sold over 100,000 copies. It won the Quebec equivalent of Canada Reads. Michel Jean is a writer, TV news anchor, and investigative journalist. And he is Innu from Mishtuiich, and his work often focuses on his own family history. So this novel is the life story of Michel's great-grandmother named Almonda. She was the orphan daughter of Irish immigrants, and then when she was 15 years old, she actually married into an Innu family in northern Quebec. So she leaves behind everything she knows. She moves in with her new family and has to learn an entirely different existence, a new language, how to live nomadically, how to hunt. And Almonda ended up living 97 years. So at the beginning, her family are living a healthy and happy existence in their traditional territories, and it's beautiful to watch her fall in love and join this community. She has her children in this community. And then over time, we see them start to lose access to the waterways that they travel. And then they end up being trapped on reserves. Residential schools come into play. They're wards of the federal government. We start to see addiction, cycles of abuse. They've lost their language and nomadic freedom. So it's a definite roller coaster to read. It's a very quick read, but it's so impactful. And I've never experienced this history through one woman's life story before. And it really like rocked me. It's written for adults, but I also think it's great for young adults. I think it's great for high school classrooms and libraries. Highly recommend.
Thank you, Taz. It sounds like I'm going to go through so many emotions reading that one. So thank you. Our last book of the evening, my cat is here bothering me now, is from Coach House. James, what feelings do you have for us?
Leave it to Coach House to make it weird at the end of the evening. But my book for you with feelings is Soldiers, Hunters, Not Cowboys by Erin Tucker. This book has a ton of feelings, but I have to admit they are on the rather cringy or awkward side. This book opens and two people, an ex-couple, who are having a conversation about the John Wayne movie, The Searchers, which is a very, very beautiful movie. The cinematography is just incredible. There's beautiful pastoral shots of the American West in it. It is also incredibly racist and really, really problematic with its depictions of Indigenous people. And the female protagonist is telling her friend about how this was a very important movie. It's one of those movies you've grown up with, you've seen a bunch of times with your family, and only as an adult you realize just how problematic this movie is. And she's trying to get over this while also telling her ex the story and the plot of The Searchers and just going through it. He's not really having any of this, and he's mostly concerned with getting drunk and trying to sleep with her. We call it Cat a Person meets Station 11. That's the cat person part to it. The evening does not end well. Some time passes and a different book starts. It's a very different mode where the first part's just two people talking. The second part, there's been an apocalyptic event in the city, and there's a giant column of smoke rising from the middle. And Erin does an incredible job showing what just post-disaster in a big city would be like. Some people are still trying to get to work and go about their daily business. Other people are panicking. Communication starts going down. Public transit starts going down. And our protagonist takes it upon himself to go rescue his ex, just like John Wayne and The Searchers. That does not go well for him at all. And part of The Searchers starts bleeding into the reality. People start acting strange. There's something in the air. Smoke is affecting people. And this part of the book sort of spirals out of control. Erin is a professor. He's an academic of film studies as well. So he was really interested in trying to talk about the toxic masculine culture of Westerns and how on one side cinematically they can be so stunning and hold great aesthetic value, with on the other hand being absolutely pieces of racist garbage. He weighs these things very, very well, and he really wanted to talk about the difficulty of appreciating nostalgia in movies, and he does it by talking about toxic masculinity and film in a very awkward, cringy, almost Larry David style argument. Soldiers, Hunters, Not Cowboys, out this June.
It looks like everyone in the chat agrees with me that Weirdo is a good way to end the night. So thank you, James. Thank you to all my publishing pals and to our wonderful booksellers and librarians who joined us tonight. It's the first night of the Leafs playoffs, so my partner is upset that I'm not watching with him, but that's okay. I'm here with you all, and you make working in publishing an absolute dream job. So thank you for supporting our books, our authors, and for curating the content that we will always need from you all. We're going to send out a short survey and a recording of this, and the video will be available for you to watch at your leisure and to find the books again. We hope to have another event in the fall, and maybe it'll actually be in person and we can see how tall everybody is. That's the strangest thing about meeting people in person, or at least maybe a hybrid virtual, or maybe we'll just be virtual again. We'll see. But since you registered for this one, you'll get all of the information about the next event. So thank you again for joining us, everyone.